So landlords, I am sure you have been seeing in the news that we have had a huge reform to the Residential Tenancies Act. So coming into effect at the end of this month, March 2021, there are a whopping 132 amendments and adjustments. So what do they all mean? So given that I specialise in sales and I have attempted to read all of this, it is a little bit complicated. So what I've done is I have asked Felicity Reid from Property Manager Plus to join me. Felicity has got a wealth of knowledge and experience in property management. I think it's pretty much been in your blood.
It has, yes.
For many, many years.
Yes.
And thankfully she has agreed to join me and basically debunk it all for us and break it down. So we'll cover off on the most important things, and then obviously we'll have the contact details there that if you've got other questions, Felicity will be more than happy to help you out. So Felicity, what are the really key changes that the landlords really need to be aware of before the end of this month?
Probably the main things that they need to be aware of are things in regards to the safety related aspects. So gas, electrical, smoke alarm servicing, which is going to become a requirement. Minimum standards, so things in regards to the way the properties are maintained and the way that they are when tenants commence their tenancy. And things in regards to the notices to vacate. So there has been a lot of changes around the types of notices that we can now issue. Some have been abolished, some have been changed. So they're really important things to need to be aware of.
Very much so, and I think too, because the moratorium from COVID ends, it almost just like we end one and we go on to
it ends
the
on
next,
the 28th, the
29th. Yeah, so I think there is a lot of confusion there about what the rights and legalities are.
Exactly.
Yeah. So on that, what other rules?
So say, for example, an owner's wanting to sell, that's something that they need to take into account. You can still give a 60-day notice to vacate, which hasn't been able to be an easy process during the whole COVID-related thing. You've had to apply to VCAT, whereas now that notice is coming back in, so you will be able to issue the 60-day notice to vacate. But owners need to know that they will have to compensate tenants $30 a day for each open for inspection. So either $30 a day or half a day's rent, whichever is the greater amount, just for the days that the open for inspections are on. It doesn't apply for building and pest inspections or final inspections, just those days that there are open for inspections.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, when we're selling investment properties, the first conversation I have with the tenant is, I'm sorry, I know this is not ideal, and I do genuinely understand that you have you have nothing to gain from going through this process.
Exactly.
Except for the time where potentially the person inspecting the property as a potential buyer is your new landlord.
Investor.
Is it residential provider?
Yeah,
that's a tongue twister for me at the moment. I can't quite get there. So we do acknowledge that, and they do have to put up with it and go through that process. And but at some stages, the owners of those properties need to do what they need to do
as well. It's one of those unfortunate things.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. Yeah. And then with notices as well, we used to be able to issue a 120-day notice. So it was basically a no reason notice to vacate. It was something that landlords were able to issue. That was abolished pretty much at the same time the COVID restrictions came in. But now there's an option to serve an end of fixed term notice, which there has always been that option, and you've been able to issue that at the end of any fixed term, whereas now that notice is only able to be used on the first lease. So you really need to know after the very first lease, fixed term, whether or not the tenancy is going to be suitable. So you need to be making sure that your tenants are maintaining the property, paying the rent, everyone's, working together well. Otherwise, if you go past the end of fixed term of the first lease, it does make it very difficult.
So what happens then?
So then it would just be a matter of the reasons for notice to vacate are things such as selling, moving in, notice to vacate due to rent arrears. There would be no reason just to end a tenancy just if it's not a good fit. You have to have a specific reason.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So this all segues beautifully into the next question, because I did notice that there were changes to the capacity for screening as part of the application process. Now, we all know that it's always been vital the quality of the qualification of the applicants and cross-checking and all those sort of things. But what has actually changed on that now?
Mm-hmm. So there's been quite a few changes of the information that we can request from tenants when they apply for a property. So things like date of birth, you're not really able to ask them to specify date of birth or the age of their dependents, so their children.
But don't you photograph? Don't you?
Yeah, so they do. They provide. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So most of the time we're going to receive that information anyway, so I'm not quite sure the reasons behind cutting that. But things in regards to gender, which is understandable in this day and age. We're not actually allowed to ask tenants for bank statements that show their daily transactions, so we can still ask for a bank statement as long as those things, so they can wipe them out.
Proof of funds.
Yeah, we need, if we need to verify their income, things like that. That's all we need. We're not interested in what tenants spend their money on a daily basis. Just to know that they can cover
each month there is some rent going into the
exactly. We're not actually able to specifically ask them if they've ever not had a bond refunded or if they've had a previous tenancy terminated, which is probably one of the strange ones, because we are allowed to ask their real estate agent or their private landlord that information, but not directly to the applicant. So again, I don't quite understand why, because we are allowed to find out that information through other means, but it's not something that we can specifically ask on the application.
Because that's actually pretty important.
Yeah.
From
probably the most important thing that we need to know.
From a property manager's side and from a residential rental provider's side.
Exactly.
That's critical.
Yeah, it's very important. So I can't explain why, but
you didn't write it.
Yeah,
so it's okay.
And I think that's why it's just reference checking is just going to become so important. It's obviously always been important, but you won't be able to put a tenant in without being able to verify a reference of how they've maintained or looked after a property previously.
Yeah. All new skill sets coming up.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. No. So realistically, what do you feel are the biggest challenges for the landlords / residential rental providers in this transition period?
I think just making sure that they're being given the correct information. I know there's a lot of grey area out there. Unfortunately, the media outlets are putting out certain bits of information, maybe not the whole picture.
Highlight reel.
Yeah, panicking a lot of people into thinking that they need to sell their investment, that, things are going to end up being, costing them so much that there's no point having an investment property, which is not the case. I think just making sure that they've got a property manager who is informed. If they're private landlords, making sure that they've read everything in there. You actually need to read every single thing.
There's a lot of pages. There's 203 pages, and I'll be honest with you. I started. Then I went to the highlight reel, and then I just called you.
Exactly.
Because that's just easier. It's just easier.
The property managers need to do their training to know that they're giving the correct information to guide their owners to make sure that they're protected. Yeah,
and to make sure also, because I know we were having a chat the other day about it, because I said, are there any consequences with regards to if landlords... I'm sorry, landlords is easier. It's just easier. You and I have been doing this too long now, they're landlords. But if they didn't have all of the new minimum standards and minimum requirements in place by a certain time and things like that, I was sort of saying, is there any consequence directly to them?
Yeah. So tenants can request things to be done. So if any of the minimum standards aren't met, tenants can request an urgent maintenance to make sure that they are done.
Yeah.
My main worry with it is if things aren't meeting the minimum standards. So say, for example, one of the things is that all external doors need to have deadlocks.
Yep.
If doors don't have deadlocks, something happened, a tenant was robbed and injured, I would worry where the liability would lie if the owner hasn't upkept the property to those minimum standards. I don't know, I don't know how insurance are going to look at it, but that's what I'm advising my owners, that you need to just make sure you're covered just so nothing like that can come back on you.
Yeah, because that's the thing people don't sort of plan on, obviously, and don't necessarily foresee.
Yeah.
And I think it would have a fair test.
Yeah. Definitely.
In a case, if it went to the courts, or something did happen, I think there would be a very much a 100%.
Definitely.
Yeah, especially when a lot of it's around safety features, isn't it?
Yeah,
so on the minimum requirements, what's a quick helicopter view?
you're probably going to find majority of properties are already going to meet these standards. One of the things is a flushable toilet. I would hope that every landlord onto your property has a flushable toilet. Just one, yeah. Heating in a living room, that is something that is coming in. Again, probably a large majority of the properties these days do have heating in the main living space.
Yeah, no, it's Melbourne.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
we need heating.
Exactly, and I don't think that's an unreasonable thing.
No.
Things like minimum water-saving shower heads. Again, that's a really tricky one because I know most property managers going out to property looking to shower, it's going to be very difficult. Plumbers have told me there's no way you'll know if it's water saving, but it is one of those things that a tenant can request and a landlord will need to provide.
Okay.
Draft proofing bins, council bins, things like that. Yep. So majority of the things you're going to find are already covered.
Yeah, so just things that can be expected for a normal, comfortable life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So probably one of the sound bites that's been playing on all the major media is about the tenants renters being able to make modifications to the house or the apartment that they're renting.
Yeah.
Likely to be sending chills up the spines of every investment property owner about now as to what is going to happen, either cosmetically probably to their properties and where do they stand.
Yeah. So again, this is where the media outlets have done a really good job of worrying a lot of people. I think they've made out that tenants can go in and whack a double-story extension on the property, which is not the case at all.
And yet would increase value.
It was done well, possibly, but I wouldn't recommend it. It is minor things. So there's two aspects. There's modifications that tenants can do without permission and the modifications that owners can't unreasonably withhold permission. Okay. So for what tenants can do without permission, some of those are things like picture hooks, putting up baby gates, but ones that don't actually impact, not hardware, safety gates. So pressure mounted. The ones that extend out. Yeah, exactly. Things in regards to, there's, other little aspects like that, but things that don't actually affect or impact the property. So wireless doorbells, things like that. Things that owners can't unreasonably withhold permission for are things like safety gates that do actually impact, or have to actually be mounted into the walls. Anything related to telecommunications, so NBN, phone lines, things like that. Anything to do with safety for the tenant, or things that have been maybe recommended by a healthcare provider or occupational therapist. If they're things to help assist people with their day-to-day living. So those kind of things can't unreasonably be withheld. But it is very minor things. Painting is another thing that
this is the one that I'm wanting a little bit of clarity on.
So renters will be able to request permission to paint. Owners are not able to unreasonably say no. They can request, though, that it has to be done professionally. And there is grounds for the owner to request $500 to add on to the existing bond to put towards the repair being rectified at the end of the tenancy. So everything I've mentioned needs to be rectified at the end of the tenancy.
Okay, yeah.
Unless, of course, agreed otherwise with your owner. So things like picture hooks, maybe you might agree that it's not worth fixing them. I quite often just recommend to my owners just to put some picture hooks in walls where they're happy to have pictures hung, and then you're not going to have tenants needing to go in and just put holes in walls where it's not necessary.
Because there's in a house or in a room there are logical places where you would reasonably expect someone would probably want to put a canvas or something. So you can preempt that anyway.
Exactly.
And moving forward after that tenant vacates, they may as well use those hooks for the next.
That's the thing, because if you're going to be patching them up and then somebody else is putting another hole, it's just not worthwhile.
No, a bit of common sense.
Yeah. So everything needs to be reinstated. So if things that are done aren't reinstated at the end of the tenancy, owners can seek further compensation for that.
Is that the $500?
Yep. They can also make an application to VCAT if the $500 doesn't cover that. There is grounds for them to make a further compensation order. To have, money withheld from the remainder of the bond to reinstate the property back to the way that it was. And also things like, say, if the property is going on the market, that's reasons why they can say, no, you're not permitted to do these things because it may affect the value of the property. Yeah.
No, cool. Are there any other?
They're the main, that's the main.
I think
main ones covered.
I think also they're the ones that have had the airtime.
Most airtime, exactly. Yeah. So there are some other small ones, but they're the main ones that are covered.
Awesome. So with you were talking about the gas, electricity, things like that.
Yep.
So What are the reasonable costs that the landlords or the residential what is it?
Residential rental
Yeah,
providers, yeah.
the RRPs.
Yeah.
What are they looking at outgoings wise
Yeah.
now for each year?
So the new legislation states that smoke alarms need to be maintained annually, and
But they have been, haven't they?
it's never been a requirement. It's been a recommendation, but now it's a requirement that it has to be done. Yeah, and then gas and electrical has to be done every 2 years. So there are a lot of companies out there who are offering an all-encompassing service. So with us, we've got the beauty that we're not, we're more of a boutique business. So we are giving our owners the option to either go with this all-encompassing service, or if they have their own trades, qualified electricians and gas plumbers, we're happy to coordinate and working with them as well. Because sometimes, it does seem like a large expense when you look at it. So the range that I'm hearing is for the initial service, it's around the $380. Plus, there's a setup fee for the first year. So pretty much in that first year, you're looking at $600 to make sure.
So is that so is that for all three?
Yeah, for all three.
Okay.
Yeah, and then ongoing it'll be around that $380 per year. So that's going to be an ongoing expense that owners will have to make sure that.
So if the gas and electricity is every 2 years, so they're basically paying a landlord subscription to that provider to have that taken care of and spread the payments.
Yeah, and what most of the companies are doing, they're going to do all three services in that first year, so the owners know that they're covered. Yeah. And then every year the smoke alarms, and then they'll biannually do the gas and electricity alternating. Yep. But there will still be that set annual fee.
Well, and that just keeps a nice steady
so
outgoing.
you know what to expect. Exactly.
Yeah, because I know when you start talking, we have to have a gas person, we have to have an electrician, and it's like, oh crap, what's that going to cost?
Yeah, exactly right.
Again, a little bit of alarming information that's been going out about what this is going to add on to the landlords each year.
And I think everyone's panicking that these services have to be done by the 29th of March. If you're renting a new property, then yes, it has to be done before the new tenant can move in. If you've already got a tenant on a periodic tenancy, so they're just month to month, there is a grace period up to 2023 for these checks to be done. However, obviously, we do recommend doing it at the most practical, as soon as possible. And then say if you've got a tenancy in place now that's expiring in July, when you either renew or release that property, you'll have to make sure that those checks are done then. So there's not a mad rush to get it done by the 29th of March unless you've got a property that you will be releasing after that, right around that time.
It's like everything. It all just has to go in its turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to get tradies. It's not always that easy.
No, and they're very busy at the moment.
They are a tad. Yes, they are a tad. Okay, so thank you so much, Felicity. I know that we've only had a little bit of a helicopter view, but I'm really hopeful and I'm pretty sure that any investors out there have got a little bit more of an understanding, and we've broken it down into what I would call some layman's terms. Yeah. So thank you so much.
That's okay. And we definitely have only touched on it, like you said. But if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to help. My number is 0477 554 222. Feel free to get in touch with any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can